Well, welcome back, everybody. This is Trevor Swenson with Through the Darkness, a YouTube channel that I'm putting together to discuss trauma and PTSD and my journey, my personal journey through it in hopes of reaching other people and helping other people. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about something that is a difficult topic for me to talk about. But I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to be honest in hopes that it helps others get a jump on their battle with trauma or somebody else's battle with trauma that you might know is struggling at this point. There are three things that I want you to take from today's video, three words that I want you to take, and one phrase. Collaborative care is one of the phrases. Honesty and transparency. All three of those are very, very, very important in getting an accurate diagnosis. And I've learned from experience that not doing those three things as quickly as possible leads to a lot more trouble and anguish than there needs to be. The story I'm going to finish with is titled "The Bear in the Cabin," and hopefully it ties everything together as to this complex story of my diagnosis. The symptoms I was experiencing that became overwhelming and started to change my ability to function in everyday life started out with anxiety, an anxiety that was a debilitating type of anxiety as far as physically feeling ill and being dissociative, being disconnected because I was so concerned about the level of anxiety that I was having, that it was really making it difficult for me to enjoy life. And I made the bad but normal, very normal judgment call of self-medicating with alcohol. And after not having an issue with alcohol my entire adult life and very much enjoying having a beer or two on occasion, it quickly morphed into something that took control of me and created all sorts of other issues that I want to make you aware of as well. Another one of the symptoms that I was having was heart palpitations that really couldn't be explained. Went through cardiology, and all they could tell me really was that I had an extremely healthy heart, and it may have been due to the medications that I was taking for the anxiety. And if you've struggled with anxiety, you know that its partner is depression. And I had never dealt with depression in my adult life or my life period. And depression started being a big member of my PTSD equation. And with the depression came my loss of interest and passion for doing things that I so love to do in life, whether it would be bow hunting or duck hunting or fishing, spending time with people. I'll touch on that in a little bit here. And all of that fed the fire of self-medication with alcohol. And it wasn't the alcohol as much as it was why I was using it and the amount that I was using to get the effect that I needed. I was a person that would drink at the same time every night for the same period of time, and just to feel normal. And that's a red flag. And I hope that if there's anybody out there under the sound of my voice, that if you're starting to do that, that you really take note and that you really pay attention to that, because that is a very dangerous road to go down. Then withdrawal from people started to happen. I was a very social person. I enjoyed people. I enjoyed being around people. I enjoyed groups of people. I enjoyed doing things with the group of guys that I was very, very tight with, and that all started to go away. And obviously, with that, built the depression on top of all of the other issues that were still there, the anxiety, the alcohol abuse. I was worried about my heart. I was worried about my loss of interest in all of the things that I loved doing, and I could feel myself slowly being emptied is the best way that I can describe it. Because of the drinking, because of the effects that it had on my body, I developed a sleep disorder. I developed sleep apnea, which for somebody with my build, my physiology was very awkward because I was tall and lean, but the alcohol had taken quite a toll on my body and my physiology. My blood pressure went through the roof. My normal resting blood pressure got to a level of normally 150 to 160 over 110 to 115, which, if you know blood pressure, that's just not healthy. And again, going back, I was a healthy, happy, successful individual, and things started to unravel. I then got hit with the diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, which was directly tied to my alcohol use, which all of my numbers were screwed up because of the alcohol use. My triglycerides, blood sugar, obviously, and obviously the added weight to my body was making everything more difficult, and I was actually diagnosed with diabetes as well, which was a huge bummer and a huge blow. So you can just see that for me it was a spiral of symptoms getting worse and worse and worse. All of which I want you to listen carefully to this, all of which were being treated wonderfully as individual symptoms and things that were wrong or going on with me. I was being treated for anxiety. I was being treated for depression. I was being treated for the sleep apnea and the high blood pressure, and the puzzle wasn't fully put together. But I will tell you, by the grace of God, and I hope this happens for you, if you're listening today, and if you're at this point, or if you're at any point in trying to figure your own trauma journey out, I finally disappointed enough people that mean enough to me with my alcohol use. I wasn't abusive, but alcohol will make you say stupid things. It'll make you do stupid things, and it takes you out of the game. It masks who you truly are to others. And after some things were pointed out to me, and I disappointed enough people close to me and hurt enough people close to me, I made the decision to check into a facility. And I will tell you that it was one of the lowest points of my life, which in turn, I want you to hear this loud and clear, which in turn ended up being the pivotal point in my road to healing and recovering from PTSD. Because at that check-in, as we were going through my chemical abuse survey, I'll never forget the psychotherapist put their pen down, looked at me, and said, "There's more going on here, and before we check you in for long-term care, I really would like you to see somebody about PTSD. And I remember looking at this person with this bewilderment, like, okay, I just told you my story. I was completely transparent with you, and now we're at PTSD. Um, and that moment was pivotal because I got moved onto a psychotherapist, a specialist that had dealt not only with chemical addiction but also with PTSD. And I will never forget at my very first session, getting the diagnosis of PTSD, the actual diagnosis of PTSD. I started crying my eyes out, and it was the most surreal thing because the therapist said, I'm really sorry that you had to hear that, but that's what we're dealing with right now." And I remember looking at her, my wife was there, and I said, these are actually tears of joy, because I am tired of setting mousetraps when I'm dealing with a bear. And that bear was PTSD. And finding out that it was PTSD obviously changed the entire chain of treatment. And it was a breakthrough moment to where now we had a target on something that was tangible instead of this smorgasbord of things that were wrong with me and broken and falling apart. We now knew what it was, and it was actually a joyful moment for me because at least we knew what it was. So I just want to lay that out there in that much detail so you are able to think about those things that I was experiencing, and if yours don't have an answer, we'll talk about it more in the next episode about what your trauma might be when there are all these things flying apart and you can't put two and two together, that there is hope and that there is encouragement. The whole reason I'm doing this is to use myself as an example that there is hope and there is encouragement for you. So I want you to picture this, and I'm going to close with this analogy. Picture that you have a perfect little cabin in the woods, perfectly house kept, wonderful, your safe place. And every single time you go to that safe place, that perfect place, you walk in to find that it is completely turned upside down and destroyed. Okay? Now, the first inclination obviously is to get things back together, but the second thing that you would be thinking is, what caused this? What caused this? Okay? And let's say that you determine, you determine that it is raccoons. Okay? And you go about and you set up traps for raccoons. And you go home and you come back a week later to your safe place in the woods, your beautiful little getaway cabin, and all of the effort you put into trapping the raccoons did nothing. It's still torn upside down. Okay? So the next step you do is, well, maybe it is the neighbors. Maybe the neighbors are coming in and turning things upside down. And so you walk over and you talk to the neighbors, and you can imagine how that goes if it's not the neighbors that did it, and you find out it's not the neighbors. And so you go about dealing with a completely screwed up cabin again. So come to find out that it is a bear. You finally talk to somebody, you finally get help figuring it out, and it is a bear. Think about how differently you would go about attacking something or taking care of something or addressing something if you knew that it was a bear in your cabin. You would call the Department of Natural Resources. They would get an enormous live trap, and they would do what they do to take care of bears. And all along, you've been setting mouse traps, you've been setting raccoon traps, you've been raising heck with your neighbors, when what you really needed was to find out that it was a bear that was raising so much hell in your life. And so the question I ask you is, what in your life, if you're completely honest, could it be that's possibly causing all of this pain and all of this quiet torment for you? And you need to be honest with yourself. And I'm asking you to be honest with yourself and to dig deep and to think about the traumatic things or the things that hurt you deeply. They are very, very important in collaborative care, so that the people that are taking care of you know the full story, so they know exactly what it is that they are dealing with. Telling them bits and pieces of your story, just like the screen was broken in the cabin, could mean lots of things, okay? But if you tell them the whole story, the beds were turned over, the door was knocked down, if you tell them exactly the state of your personal cabin, who you are going to be that much closer to really putting a target on the back and being able to attack that which is making life so difficult for you to live. And I want to encourage you to spend some time thinking about that and be very, very open with your doctors and be very, very open about the things you're struggling with, whether it be how much you're drinking or your patterns of drinking or why you're drinking, or what is really, really bothering you that is driving you towards these particular things. Another term that I didn't cover is skydiving. I found myself doing really stupid things, driving snowmobiles and ATVs extremely fast and taking risks that I shouldn't be taking, doing things that I normally wouldn't do that made absolutely no sense to others and myself that knew me as the person that I was. And if any of this is part of your story, I just ask you and challenge you to talk to your healthcare provider and tell them your whole story and be honest and be open and authentic, as difficult as that may be, because it could really be a breakthrough moment for you. And take that first step. As crappy as it was for me to walk across the parking lot of that recovery place, having never struggled with alcohol in my life, it was the pivotal moment when I picked up my mat and I walked across that parking lot to get help. And I challenge you to do the exact same thing, because your family, your friends, and your legacy obviously will one day say, thank you for doing that for us. Next week, I'm going to be doing a piece on what is your trauma. We're going to talk about all of the different toxic, ugly things in life that could be very, very traumatic to you, and things that may not be traumatic to one person may be unbelievably traumatic to another person. And I want to take the time to discuss those as well, to open your eyes to what I've learned as far as trauma is concerned. But my day of joy was a weird day of joy when I was diagnosed with PTSD, because at least I knew the bear that I was dealing with that was in my cabin. So stop setting mouse traps and start taking care of that bear in your cabin. I can't wait to see you next time on the next episode. Take care. I wish you peace, and I wish you comfort and lots of love. See you next time.